Hello everyone, this is Jasmina, and in this video I'm going to talk about finding your solar time of birth. And I've decided to do this because I talked about this in an earlier video, and this may be hard for some people, but I think I found a way to do it quite easily. And the reason why I'm worried about this is there can be quite a bit of difference between the clock time, which is usually the time recorded on your birth certificate, and the solar time. And it depends on the practitioner whether or not this is important, but I think it can make a difference. Now, there can easily be over an hour of difference between these two clocks. So this is why this can really make a difference. Now, some practitioners do use local time, that is clock time, to fix your time of birth, but others prefer to use solar time, and for me personally, solar time seems to be more correct. Now, I happen to have a situation where between 1 2-hour period of the Chinese hour or the Qingmen hour, and the next one goes from Fanyin to a Fuyin chart, and the interpretation then is quite different, even though the charts aren't as different as they might otherwise be. Now, the importance, of course, depends on how much time difference there is and how much difference there is between two adjacent charts. So this is one reason why this is of concern. Now, with the website timeanddate.com, this conversion actually is quite easy. Now, I've actually used timeanddate.com for a lot of things. I use it to figure out the correct time for meetings when I'm in a different time zone than the person is. And of course, most of my meetings are over the internet. I've also used it to design solar shades. Now, these solar shades, depending on where you live, can be important. They can be optimized to let the winter sun in, but block the summer sun. And that can make a difference if you're in a hot climate, especially one that actually in the wintertime can be quite cold. And so this is what you want to do. However, you need to be outside the Tropic of Cancer or the Tropic of Capricorn. That is, you can't be closer to the equator than these two lines, which is roughly at 23 degrees north or south in latitude. Now, I've also used this to convert clock time to solar time, and that's what I'm going to talk about here. Now, the Qingmen and Batzi charts are the same for 2-hour periods over most of the day. Not all of the day, but most of the day. The first hour is from midnight to just before 1 a.m. The second hour is from 1 to just before 3. The third is from 3 to just before 5, and so forth. And then the last hour is from 11 p.m. to just before midnight. And so this can be, so if you're born close to midnight, actually on either side, depending on the difference between solar and clock time, you might be born on a different day even. This you'll most likely be born only on a different hour. And you might actually be born on the same hour too. It all depends on the details. So once you get to the timeanddate.com webpage, you want to click on the Sun and Moon tab. A drop-down list should open, and you want to click on the Sun calculator, and that should be the one on the top of that drop-down list. Then you're going to enter the name of the city where you were born. Now, you might have to interpolate if your city is not listed. And I'm going to talk about this in more detail near the end of the video. Now, once you've got the city in and you click enter, it's going to create some tables for you and also some images too. You want to scroll down until you can find the table. And here you need to enter both the month and the year of birth. Now the month is easy, but the year is a little tricky. This has a window of only 20 years for each, I guess, sub-web page. So I am recording this in 2023, and so I can go back to a date as early as 2003. And once you do that, you can click on 2003, you hit go. You probably won't see any change in the table unless you look at the very details. But then if you go back to the year tab again, you can go back to 83 and you can click go again. And you can even go back to 63 and so forth by keep going back until you find your year of birth. So that is the only tricky part here. Then in the second to the last column on the right hand side, you're going to look for the column that says solar noon. And on that year and month of birth, you will have every day listed. You want to look for the solar noon time on the day you were born. And if that time is after 12, you want to subtract those extra minutes from your clock time of birth. If the time is before 12, which is noon, of course, you want to add the extra minutes to your clock time of birth. And I'm going to give you some examples so this can be a bit clearer. So here's the first example. Someone born in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, which is very close to the equator. And if they were born on this date, and you can look at the solar noon column, and this is what you would see. 1:18 p.m. and then you see a degree. Now this degree is the slope, not the slope. This is the degree from not really the horizon, because that has to do with what you have around there. It is the degree from 90 degrees from nadir, that is directly overhead. It's a little confusing, but you can see this is nearly straight overhead, but that's because it's so close to the equator. Any place built closer to the equator than either the Tropic of Cancer or the Tropic of Capricorn, sometime of the year they're going to have the sun to the south of them. Other times it'll be to the north of them. So it's kind of a little strange for people who live elsewhere, because we're used to the sun always being in kind of one general direction. Now, what this time means that the sun peaks, that is how you define solar noon, at 1:18 p.m. on the clock time. Now that is 78 minutes after noon on your clock. So if someone was born at 1:10 a.m. on March 29th, they would actually have a solar birth of 11:52 p.m. the day before. And that results in a very different chart. It results in a different day master. It has really, really significant differences. And if it doesn't change the day, you usually do not change your day master, but you can change a lot of things in the chart. So this is why this part is important. But you could be someone, let's say you were born at 2:20 p.m. on that same day. You actually have a birth time of 1:02 p.m. that same day. That results in the same chart, but this time is close enough that the question of what is defined as birth time could be important. So it may still be possible that the hour before this represents or corresponds to you better than this particular hour. But that has nothing to do with the difference between clock time and solar time. That has to do with the definition of when you were born. I did discuss this before. If you, in ancient China, you were considered born if the head had emerged from the mother's body. But here, in most of the places where you have a birth certificate, that time of birth is on the clock when they finally note it. I mean, I don't know that they, actually this is not very well defined. And so that's why if you're born very close to an odd hour change, it tends to be an issue. Now here's another example. This is for Harbin, China. Someone born on September 23rd of 2003. If you go to that second to the last column, the solar noon reads 11:26 a.m. And this is the angle that the sun will be at, which is of course a lot lower in the sky, and that makes sense because it's it's much farther north. So this means that the sun is at its peak 34 minutes before the clock time of noon, on the clock that is. So if you were born at 11:53 p.m. on September 23rd, that's close to midnight, your actual solar birth time is the next day at 1:27 a.m. So again, this would result in quite a different chart, different day master, a lot of things are different. But if you were born at 1:53 p.m. that same day, it would result in a birth time of only 2:27 p.m. that same day. Now this results in the same chart, and you don't have the problem of you're born too close to an odd hour change. So this probably will definitely be your chart. Now in general, and this is just the way it works, if a city is on the eastern side of their time zone, they may have solar noon before clock noon. But daylight savings can change this if your country or city or state or the equivalent of state uses it. Cities on the western side of their time zone may have a solar noon after clock noon, and that is just the way it works. Now, if your city is not listed, the way you want to interpolate is first pick one city, a closest city you can find in your country and in your time zone that is to the west of your birth city, and another one to the east of your birth city. Now you use those to use both of those separately, to convert your clock time into solar time. As long as it's in that same 2-hour period, you're okay. You know the proper chart. So this sometimes a problem, sometimes it's not. And it depends on how close you are to that odd hour change. Now that uncertainty of your solar birth does happen, or at least it can happen, when you're born just after an odd hour change or just after midnight with the solar birth, or solar birth time. So you still have to look at this, and this might explain why some people feel like their Batsa or their Qimin doesn't represent them. And that's because it's either a big difference between the solar and clock time, or it's because you're born too close to an odd hour change. So I hope this was helpful. I'd like to thank you for watching. Please feel free to contact me here if you have any questions, or visit my AdFree website.